I mean, he had an unbelievable season considering he was sharing targets in the first half of the year. I think with A.J. Brown, we got a good glimpse of a lot of attention rolling with Brown, and that opening up the guy that Hurts probably trusts the most. I mean, he does have a couple drop issues, but I think you'll see a guy that's open just constantly. I agree with you, Jody. I think that Goedert has a huge role in this offense, and the numbers will be popping off the page where you're going to be talking about top 5.
A Wednesday edition of Birds 365 with McMullen and McDonald. We are joined by our beach bud from down the shore, the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. Mike Gill jumps in with us here on Birds 365. Looks like he got the tan working just fine, or it could be his lighting. I'm not sure which one. How are you, Mr. Gill?
Mac, I'm doing good. It's another beautiful day down the shore. It's one of those days where it feels like football is close.
Yeah, how about we are getting close, but even closer for you to Labor Day, Mike, when you get a little breather. And maybe you can enjoy that nice weather down the shore.
This whole week has felt like a little fall. It's been a little extra chill in the air, especially at night. So we're getting ready.
Hoodie season.
Right? The silly season.
Yeah.
I don't know how silly it is, but we probably pay too close attention to it and dissect it and take it down to its studs every single play that's made, practice, preseason game. Well, yeah, preseason should be a little bit more important. We haven't had you on since Jalen Hurts went 6 for 6 on his, John likes to remind us, the perfect quarterback ranking that he put up.
Perfect, baby.
He's going to be able to do that all year, right, Mike? It doesn't matter, regular season, preseason, joint practices. He's going to complete every pass against another team's opponent all year, correct?
I asked John on my show Monday, what was more impressive, Hurts on Friday or Sam Bradford against Green Bay going 10 for 10 when he was going to be like the MVP of the league? I mean, I think we all know that these games are, I don't know, Hurts probably won't take another snap between now and the first
I hope
week.
so. I want the perfect preseason, Mike. If they sit him, he'll always have that perfect preseason. I'll be bringing up that for years.
Wasn't Bradford the same? Did he play again in the preseason after that, or was that all we saw of him and everybody was all excited? I mean, these preseason games, especially, you think they only play 3 now, and then there's a week off before the season starts. So you're not playing another game in a real snap for almost a month. That the last time we would have seen him in a game other than these joint practices. So that 6 for 6 night is all you're going to get. So sure, there's probably going to be some extra anticipation when he takes that snap against Detroit in week 1.
Yeah. I think things will get a little bit of clarity with the joint practices just for the real. They're practicing against 2, maybe not, people don't look at them as significant contenders, but 2 pretty talented rosters over the next 2 weeks. You get to see Myles Garrett. You get to see Nick Chubb. You get, who knows what's going to happen with Deshaun Watson coming down. But that offensive line, even though they've lost 2 centers, everybody else is really good. JOK at linebacker is a heck of a player. Denzel Ward is back. You just get a nice little temperature taking for the Eagles against a different color, so to speak.
Yeah, and these joint practices have kind of become the thing, which is interesting because you can get hurt in a joint practice, I guess, as much as you could in a preseason game. But I guess the whole theory is we can run a 3rd and 7 play 10 times in a row if we want to and see who our receiver is, who's going to get that big 3rd and 7 play for us, as opposed to a preseason game where in 1 or 2 series – a down and distance that we don't like or that we want to see may never come up. So I guess this is why these practices have kind of replaced these preseason games. But, the hope is, as you mentioned, this Cleveland defense is pretty good, that the Eagles offense will get a shot to go up against a defense that does have some talent on it. I guess I don't know, is Watson going to practice in these things?
They're having settlement talks. That's the NFLPA and the NFL. So that's evidently heating up. It'll be interesting. I assume even if they settle, he'll be able to practice. But I don't know how Cleveland will want to handle it because they have to get Jacoby Brissett ready for the regular season, and he probably needs some work. So it is going to be interesting to see how they handle it.
Yeah, because that would be the one spot where they're a little in flux, I guess. I mean, because they've got, you mentioned the running backs, their offensive line's pretty good. They've got a couple of weapons. The only unsettling spot for this Cleveland team is really they're very much like the Eagles. The most important spot is probably the most unsettling spot.
And at least the Eagles have the decision in their own hands. The Browns don't even have that yet. One guy I do want to ask about on the Birds, and I was thinking about him yesterday, not only because of what he's done in practice all off season leading up to this game and the practice is up against the Browns, but the fact that every time I turned on ESPN yesterday, they were in fantasy mode. That it was fantasy special. All right, they're doing a fantasy special. I'll come back later.
Marathon.
And it says still on, and it's still on, and it's still on. I'm ready to shoot my TV. And every time they went to a tight end evaluation and listing, whatever, Dallas Goedert doesn't crack the top 5, which I don't quite understand, and I sure as hell don't agree with the way he's been used here in the preseason and the fact that he and Jalen seem to be on the same page. He could be a top 3 tight end in the NFL this year. Agree or disagree, Mike Gill?
Oh, I'm a big fan of Goedert this year, Jody. I would agree. In fact, I had it on over my shoulder at one point yesterday, and I saw somebody labeling him as a bust this year. In other words, don't draft him. You're going to be disappointed. I think, when Ertz got traded last year, whatever week that was, right around midseason, 8, 9, somewhere around there, I remember saying, don't be surprised if Goedert finishes with 1,000 yards this year. And he got damn near close. I think he kind of slowed down towards the end. But if you look at his yards per game, I mean, he had an unbelievable season considering he was sharing targets in the first half of the year. I think with A.J. Brown, we got a good glimpse of a lot of attention rolling with Brown and that opening up the guy that Hurts probably trusts the most. I mean, he does have a couple drop issues, but I think you'll see a guy that's open just constantly. I agree with you, Jody. I think that Goedert has a huge role in this offense, and the numbers will be popping off the page where you're going to be talking about top 5 statistical season for him. And not to mention, he's on the field a lot because he blocks too.
Right. Yeah.
So they can get him, more snaps. He's not one of those guys that you have to find sub packages to try to find ways to give him the ball.
Now, I'll ask you both this because my first assessment, look, full disclosure, there is nothing I care less about in life than fantasy football. So when somebody says Dallas Goedert's going to be a bust in a fantasy realm, is that more on Dallas Goedert or the quarterback? In other words, if you're a receiver, you need a vehicle to get you the football.
Right.
And there are certain guys, I always use Derek Carr and Kirk Cousins as the example. They're good quarterbacks, but they're not great quarterbacks, but they're going to put up great numbers. So they're good fantasy people, not only for what they do throwing the football, but who they're going to throw the football to, because they're going to get a ton of yardage and a ton of traffic. So when they say that, are they really saying Jalen Hurts isn't good enough to get Dallas Goedert the ball?
Well, interestingly enough, that same marathon has Jalen Hurts ranked as the 6th best fantasy quarterback.
Well,
so, right.
real quick,
how that works. It's because he's going to pull the ball down and run with it and score touchdowns with his legs.
Exactly. So it kind of just shows that those rankings are based more on statistical output and what kind of offense you're in. If Hurts, look, for me, I think that Goedert is, when they drafted him in the 2nd round, you're kind of thinking, well, you have Zach Ertz here. Well, this is the guy that we thought was so talented that we had to have him here. And for a couple of years, they're trying to figure out ways to kind of incorporate him. And while he wasn't a full-time player, you're always kind of like, man, this guy makes plays. Could he actually be better than the best all-time tight end that you've ever had? And it's hard to come to terms with sometimes that the next guy is better than the guy you're watching who helped you win a Super Bowl, was a second-round pick himself, and was a justifiable second-round pick. That was a Chip Kelly pick, I think, by the way. So when you're replacing the guy who's your best, it's hard to imagine that he's better. But Goedert might actually be better than Ertz. I mean, he might have more physical tools, size, speed, blocking ability than Ertz does.
He's definitely more well-rounded.
Not to mention, I don't know that Zach Ertz was going to pinball off that tackle and get into the end zone. No. He was not known for his yards after the catch, if you will.
Right, and you got the right read on it, Mike. If you're just talking about all-around ability, Goedert's going to go by Ertz. Ertz was the better pass catching, put up the numbers he did. No Eagle tight end prior to.
Better hands, definitely.
Has done anything, but I would not be surprised if Goedert gets into Ertz-like receiving numbers this year. I'm predicting a big season for Ertz throwing the football. The Eagles are going to throw the football if we evidence nothing else in game number 1. First drive, 0-1 attempts. I think they were kind of making a statement that, yes, the Eagles are here to throw the football this year, which means Goedert's going to get a lot of balls thrown his way. I think he can do what Ertz can do. I think he can be as good a pass catcher, damn close to it, and you add in the ability to block into the mix. That's what makes him a better all-around tight end than Ertz.
And they don't really have another guy. John and I talked about this yesterday, is they don't really have a second guy at this moment right now. I think that's very up in the air. So you would imagine when John posts the snap counts on a Monday, you're going to see Goedert probably playing, 89% of the snaps on offense, because they just don't really have a bona fide second option at this point. So that makes him even more.
That might be low, Mike, if he's healthy. That might be low.
And on those 11% that he's not on the field, some of them are going to be 4 wide receiver sets where he's not going to be replaced by a tight end. He's going to be replaced by a 4th wide receiver.
Right. That's where your Zach Pascal gets snaps. And depending on who gets, John, you've explained, I'm sure, to the people on Birds 365 here, it's depending on the situation. Do they need a big play? You go with Watkins. Do they need more down and distance? You probably go with Zach Pascal. I think we're seeing that he's a very he's been kind of described as like a Jason Avant type of receiver, where he just knows where the sticks are. He's not a fast guy, but he can find ways to get open, sure-handed, and he turns into one of those guys that the quarterback just trusts in. I always say 3rd and 7 is that who's catching the ball on 3rd down and 7? Do you know where the sticks are? And that's a valuable player in this league, to just find a little, that I feel like the Eagles have never had that guy who just kind of finds the seam and just sits there, just like finds the open, sits and gets the ball there, and then revert. Aguilar did it in the Super Bowl year. He was excellent in the slot that year. But other than that, they really have not had that guy who can turn, catch, and then get back up the field.
Yeah, but even during the Super Bowl year, Nelson wasn't as reliable. Like, if you think of the great slot receivers, you want reliability. And the Eagles have kind of gone that route. You mentioned a couple names, Jason Avant, Jordan Matthews, the bigger type receivers than the shiftier, Patriots are famous for Welkers, Edelmans, that type of receiver.
And Ebola, right?
Yeah. I think, that's what people were hoping for a little bit with Britton Covey, but it's way too early for, to speculate about that. But I do think you bring up a good point about reliability in that 3rd and 7. If they're going to double team A.J. Brown, they're going to double team Dallas Goedert, because that's where the Eagles want to go. Who would you rather throw the football to, Zach Pascal or Quez Watkins on a 3rd and 7? I'm going Zach Pascal. I'm going to be honest. I mean, I know he's catching the football.
Right. And it's like Jason Avant wasn't the most, a flamboyant guy, but he was very dependable. He caught that ball for you and made the sticks move. A lot of the times it's, can you keep drives going? And you need that sure-handed guy when you're on the other side of the 50 to keep that first downs moving and kind of get the ball up the field. I think like 2 years ago when they were just awful, they were always playing with horrible down and distances, and they didn't have the guy who could just simply sit in there, catch the ball. And people always talk about, like, the offense doesn't look good. Well, when you're on first down and you're incomplete pass and now you're 2nd and 10 and you're always playing at bad down and distance, that's a tough way to go. But when you have those guys, that's because Wentz was just so bad at delivering the ball, but he also didn't get a lot of help that year. You had drops constantly. You had guys who just could not get open. This way, hey, 1st and 10, a little 3-yarder. Okay, now it's 2nd and 7. All right, you got guys who can catch the ball, find those little spots on the field, which should be available because of the guys. There's more talent on the field now, which gives the lesser guys space to just catch the ball, which sounds elementary, but they couldn't do it a couple of years ago.
Mike, need your take on a guy Johnny and I discussed segment 1 of the show, and that is Miles Sanders. We all know Miles' situation, contract year, very motivated. Eagles are going to use him the way they're going to use him. Opening game, threw it to him twice, even though they didn't hand it to him at all. They threw it to him twice in the first possession of the game, and he made both catches. But lo and behold, here he pops up with an injury again yesterday. So his status in these joint practices is very much up in the air. The Eagles seem to lean pretty heavily on this. They're not deep in the running back position as of right now. Can you put eggs in Miles Sanders' basket and only keep, John suggested 3. There's an outside possibility they could just keep 3. I don't think there's any chance of that. They're going to keep 4. Is 4 even enough if Miles Sanders is going to be an injury question guy all year long?
Well, I think we definitely have seen that he's an injury question, especially if you're entering with hamstring issues. That's when I start to worry. How do you shake, those soft tissue type of injuries? He's an interesting one because 2 years ago, he showed the ability to have the big breakout runs. He had all these 50-plus yard runs, and he showed that explosion. Last year, we didn't see those runs at all. And then you go back to his rookie year, where he caught almost 50 passes. Where did that guy go? So can they somehow morph the guy who caught 50 balls with the guy who had the big breakaway runs and get that guy? I don't really see them using him in that way. And I think a little bit of this injury has them concerned too. Do they keep 3? They probably do keep 3, but they know it's like the tight end. They have Richard Rodgers on speed dial. Hey, we can get Jordan Howard and kind of stash him on the practice squad because no one else is going to take him. So I think they'll probably go with 3 on the roster, but a couple guys they have, a familiarity with kind of hanging around on the practice squad. And we know in this day and age, you could find a running back just hanging around in somebody's practice.
Yeah, you would think the Eagles can't find one though. I do, one of the concerns I think, when he dropped another pass yesterday in practice, Kenny Gainwell has not taken that step forward that I think a lot of people were expecting. And it's just camp, and maybe he turns into a game player and not a practice player. But, boy, they need Miles Sanders more than ever before. Boston Scott, we talked about, reliable guy. But Jason Huntley, he's not it. And Kennedy Brooks probably not ready. Waiver wire to me is a spot where they could probably look around the league, top 53. When they cut down to the initial 53, they can probably find somebody who's cut somewhere else and get an upgrade here. But with the Eagles about to head to Cleveland, Kareem Hunt, how he's famous for the August trade. He already pulled one off with J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. Can he do it again? Would the Eagles have interest in bringing in a legitimate, decent back who you could argue is every bit as good as Miles Sanders?
Right. And they're going to be in Cleveland the next couple of days. Yeah. Here. So there's a lot of good conversation there. And look, the Eagles have personnel that they can probably consider parting with. I mean, what does Cleveland need at this point? What would they actually say? Hey, we're lacking in this area. Do the Eagles match up there?
Well, they need a center, but the Eagles can't give up a center right now. And by the way, the Browns should just sign J.C. Tretter. I mean, he's one of the best centers in football that might be getting blackballed because he's the Players Association president. But that's another discussion. They need help there. They need help at receiver. Can you convince them that Jalen Reagor is a decent reclamation project? that's going to be interesting. Jalen Reagor, most notably, very similar to JJ in that I think both need a change of scenery. JJ got it. We'll see if he can do anything with it. Jalen needs it, but the Eagles aren't going to give him away.
No.
Can you convince somebody else that Jalen Reagor has some value?
Was Andrew Berry already gone by the time the Eagles picked Jalen Reagor? I'm getting kind of. We know Catherine Race was here, right?
Yeah, Catherine was here.
And she's in a power position with the Browns now, correct?
Yeah. Barry was long gone, but Catherine was here. So I think, and the moral of the story is Cleveland knows Philadelphia's roster pretty good, and their front office people know the Eagles' front office people pretty good, which certainly you put that all wrapped into the fact that you're practicing 2 days together, you're sitting in the stadium together probably on Sunday afternoon, and you've got plenty of time for conversation to mix and match possibility. Hey, Hunt doesn't want to be here. We've got guys that you know can play, that you like, that are just maybe need a change of scenery. Maybe your coaching staff get your hands on them. So I wouldn't be shocked if something to that effect happened at all.
I would be a little surprised if they were able to pull it off, just because I'm sorry, I kind of given up on Jalen Reagor. I know for Eagles' sake and Eagles' hope, you have to hope someone else sees something that the Eagles haven't been able to get out of him. I just, sorry, don't think it's there, but that's just me. All right. Jonathan Gannon got to do some different things and punch some different buttons against the Jets this week against the Browns. Kind of a different offense, a little bit different level of player personnel. Is this going to be another learning week for Birds fans like ourselves to see what Jonathan Gannon's got planned, at least for his starting unit against Cleveland, either in the joint practices and or the game Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, and real quick, just going back to we saw the Darby for Jordan Matthews trade. What did they throw in there? Wasn't there a
third round pick?
Third round pick. So, Matthews was a guy who had been somewhat productive, but Darby just didn't fit the Buffalo. What was it? Jim Schwartz and Rex Ryan there was a switch there, right? And he just didn't fit in the defense. So they were basically like, we'll just take your guy. So something to that effect wouldn't surprise me. That's why, on that. But the defensive line, you take a look at what they did the other night. I think you're just going to continue to, there's no starters as much as they're just going to be different down and distance groupings and odd fronts. And hey, we go back to 3rd and 7. So we want our Jordan Davis there so we can get pass rushers on the outside because he's going to take up 2 guys here. I'm really intrigued to see. I don't know that you'll see him a lot Sunday, or if at all, but how much playing time they're going to end up giving him. Do you get greedy throughout the season knowing, man, this guy just takes up so much attention, and that's going to open up our Hassan Reddicks and Josh Sweats and, Brandon Graham, that kind of stuff. So I think you're just going to continue to see him mix and match as the different down and distances kind of or situations in the game.
Yeah, I think there's been a little bit of weird kind of thought that the Eagles have changed or are changing their defense. They're running the exact same thing they ran last year. Jordan Davis just, in theory, gives them a better opportunity to get in more, 2nd and 3rd and longs. But basically, it's the 5-2 overhang on rundowns, and it's the 4-man front on when they want to pass rush. And that's what it was last year, but a bunch of guys were playing out of position.
Well, you go back to Fletcher Cox when he said, they pay me to rush the passer. And he had that whole kind of stare down with Jonathan Gannon between the media. And that was him basically saying, he wants me to do something that I'm not good at, which is take up space, eat up blockers, and let other guys get sacks. Well, here's Fletcher Cox saying, no, I'm the guy that's supposed to get sacks. I'm not supposed to be here, grabbing 3 jerseys. So I think you're right, John. I think you're seeing the same. You're just seeing different personnel in those spots, which is now making it work.
Real quick to Ship. Go ahead, Jody.
I was just going to ask if we're talking about the defensive line. Are we going to see more of Derek Barnett How many snaps did he get last week?
He was a deference player. He got 2 or 3 snaps. I don't know what to make of that. So Jody brought it up. There's certain the first team starting offense. They played, I think, 8 snaps.
And
they were perfect. The defense, even less, because they quickly got off the field. But you had all the difference players, and most of them were obvious. You had new players like TJ Edwards and Marcus Epps who sort of broken through. But one guy in that category was Derek Barnett. And that part, I admit, I don't understand. Like, why do the Eagles still think Derek Barnett is part of this core as opposed to being the 4th rotational defensive end that's not going to play that much? I think Jody might have something. I think it might be time to start wondering what the heck's going on there.
Well, and that's where, you have these different base looks that are mostly odd so that you can get different pass rushers just rotating at optimal. What was Gabe Kapler's word that he wanted optimal freshness out there? So you get Derek Barnett for one series, just, hey, you're going after the pass, just bull head down, go after the passer. The next series, Jordan Davis, you're in the middle. We're going to get 2 guys next to you and then 2 guys on the outside. And those 2 guys on the outside, we're just going to tell them you have one role on this series. Give us it's like a relief pitcher. Come in and give us your best 15.
Yeah, guy throwing 98, for 15 pitches. Yeah.
Oh, Derek Barnett, there's a flag on the play. I'm sorry. You get him wound up a little bit too much. It's coming out of the referee's pocket.
Now, that said, outside of him being a bonehead, I mean, he has had some success as a pass rusher in terms of not sacks. You're right, not sacks, but getting some pressure, because part of the problem is he's getting the pressure. He just doesn't know when to let up the pressure, and he gets that late hit or he goes off sides. I mean, if you can erase those penalties, which is a big if, is he a serviceable pass rusher?
John,
4th rotational.
Do I really have to give my answer on that one, or is it
well
known?
Speaking, well, let's go here. I think the most exciting part of these joint practices this week will be, speaking of pass rushers, Myles Garrett, Jadeveon Clowney against Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson. That's as good as it gets right there.
Absolutely. And the fact, and this is a good spot too, to see, Juergens get a shot. He's going to be with the first unit here to see how he holds up against this front as well. I loved what they did with Juergens. I got to be honest, I wasn't a huge fan of taking a center. I wasn't knocking the player. It was just the round value. Center in round 2, I was kind of like, but if he steps in and can perform like he did on Friday night, you found yourself an opportunity to continue doing what you're doing with your current player, and that's hard to do. That's hard to do.
I put on the Roman Reigns acknowledge me gif. I said it on Mike Gill's show. I said it everywhere. The Eagles were taking Cam Juergens at number 51. So I'm going to pat myself on the back.
Very good. For that one. And I got to give you more credit on Juergens, because you were right last week. I thought that there was a possibility that when Kelsey went down and Juergens stepped up and became the starter, that he might be treated. What was the word you used? Deference? That Barnett got the deference this past week with his 2-snap play. I thought Juergens might get the same because he's a starter. We know he needs to work. We know he's only a rookie. We know he could use the snaps, but God forbid he go down with an injury. So the Eagles, being the protective organization that they are, I thought they were going to pull him out. They didn't. When they pulled out all the other offensive line starters, Juergens stayed in there. Johnny Mack said that would be the case. I was wrong about that. I thought they'd go err on the side of caution. Same again this week, guys? Does he still get more snaps than Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata and who am I forgetting? Isaac on the offensive line? Does he play more than anybody else on the O-line again? Because
I guess the question is, what other centers do they have that they can get him out of the game that quickly? I mean, you figure you take Kelsey out. If he played 12 snaps, then Juergens would get, the second group of snaps, and then you go to the next. What other center did they want to
take? Cameron Tom is the backup center. And, he can play 4 quarters if you need him to. Jack Anderson can play center as well. So they have some other options, but I do think they need to get him ready just in case. I think that's what it's about. And he is still a rookie. It was impressive, but,
well, they play him a lot. if they play him a lot, does that suggest that, hey, we think Kelce will be ready and we just want to give him some extra reps with this group so that, he's getting first team opportunities and getting the speed of the game against first teamers as opposed to third teamers?
Well, I definitely think the Eagles believe Jason Kelce will be back for week 1 in Detroit, but you still have to plan for the contingency. So
yeah, but getting him the most reps possible in the case that Kelce's unavailable for week 1.
Yeah, which makes some sense, and
yeah.
I think it's the right way to go about it. At Mike Gill Show, I'll end it here with you, Mike, and that's Devonta Smith. And Devonta missed a little bit of time with a soft tissue injury, groin. Before the injury, he wasn't getting much traffic. After the injury, it seems like the Eagles have said, oh, we have Devonta Smith. We got to get him involved as well. We talked about Dallas Goedert a little bit, Zach Pascal versus Quez Watkins. What kind of year are you expecting from Devonta Smith? Year 2, really good player, but now he's not the guy. That's A.J. Brown. What kind of year are you expecting from Devonta Smith?
I think we forget how solid of a year this kid had with no help around him last year.
Yeah.
I mean, he basically was the lone wolf out on that field on the outside, and I thought he handled himself pretty well, to the fact that, I do my show at Ocean Casino on Mondays, and halfway through the year, I went up and put a little wager on him to win the Rookie of the Year. Now, I didn't think it was going to happen, but the value was there. I thought maybe in the second half that he would have really taken off some, and that didn't really happen for him, but I don't see any reason why he shouldn't surpass the numbers he put up last year. And he had a pretty good year last year. And this has to do with, do they use him differently? Do they let him take more shots down the field? Is he going to get more one-on-one coverage that you will see him just out-talent the defensive back who is on him most weeks? So much like Goedert, I think he's a big factor in this offense. I don't know that he's going to have these eye-popping 1,500 yards, but I wouldn't be surprised if he approached 1,000, 1,200 yards.
All right, Mr. Value Betting. I've got one to finish off in that realm with you. Doing a show last night on WIP, somebody shot me a text of a photo of a guy who made a $20,000 bet on the Philadelphia Eagles to win the Super Bowl. And he got 25 to 1. I don't know if it was DraftKings or Stub. I don't remember.
We got 25 to 1 at Ocean on Monday.
Okay.
Not $25,000, by the way, did we put down? Just a little wager.
Okay. I said there are only 2 teams in the NFL right now that interest me as far as picking them to win it all and value of what their odds are at. One is the Philadelphia Eagles at 30 to 1, and the other is the Miami Dolphins at 40 to 1. You got a team right now you like at the number that they're at, Mike Gill?
Well, first off, so my partner on Mondays, Pete Thompson, he put $50 on the Eagles, and to which my producer said, why would you do that? And I said, if you did the same bet in 2017, you probably would have got about similar odds, maybe probably a little bit better back in 2017. But hey, for $50, it was worth it, right? So that's not a terrible bet. So I agree, Jody, with you on that one. The team that I kind of like is the Raiders. I talked about this yesterday. The Raiders remind me a little bit of like the Eagles did this offseason. They were a playoff team last year that was surprising, and they went out and got the best receiver in football to add to their offense. Now, the one issue with them is they play in a much more difficult division than the Eagles do. Yeah. So getting wins, piling up a couple of wins here and there against teams in your division is probably going to be tougher for them. But if they can make the playoffs, they will be a battle-tested team. I love getting Carr and Devonta together again. I like that matchup. They got the new coach down there. That's a team that I think you can get good value on, and wouldn't surprise me if they surprise people this year.
You like the new coach?
I mean,
I'm not a Josh McDaniels guy. That's why I'm with you on the evaluation of the talents the Raiders have. I don't like McDaniel a little bit. That's why I couldn't bet them to go to.
I don't love. I mean, I'm willing to say, all right, you had your first opportunity. It didn't go well. I'll give him credit for going back and going to the lab and trying to, I mean, it's been 10 years since he coached, right? Since he's been a head coach.
Well, yeah, it's been, he was for good reason.
Coach of the Colts for 20 minutes before he said, "Oh, never mind, I'll go back to New England again."
He was almost the coach here, by the way. Almost.
Yeah, well, listen, having Carr and Adams and they've got some good, decent. They got good defensive pass rush as well. I think that's the elements for success is rushing the passer. They've got a number one. That's something they've lacked. I mean, they just haven't had that guy, that go-to guy at wide receiver. So I like the coach enough. How about that? I don't love it.
I give Jeffrey Lurie a ton of credit because Howie Roseman was recommending Josh McDaniels to be the head coach of this team. And Jeffrey Lurie kind of knew that, all right, these two can say whatever they want right now, but they're not going to get along long term. And he was just going to keep interviewing people till they found somebody better than Josh McDaniels in their mind. And that turned out to be Nick Sirianni. I don't think people know how close it was that Josh McDaniels was going to be the coach here. And by the way, Josh McDaniels was going to hire Jonathan Gannon to be his those two are very close to be his defensive coordinator. And that's where all that said that the Eagles were going to hire Jonathan Gannon no matter what, because they were going to bring in Josh McDaniels and he was going to be his defensive coordinator. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, I'm quite happy that the Eagles didn't hire Josh McDaniels. Not a fan. Yeah. Wasn't a fan.
He was a disaster in Denver, and he knows it.
Coattails. The evidence is there. Rode Brady's coattails. All right, he won championships. Do you think it was because of Josh McDaniels and Tom Brady? Come on.
No, he was a disaster.
Denver, it basically blows up in his face. Yeah. Tim Tebow's going to carry him. Yeah, right. Nice call. He goes back to New England, wins with Brady again, gets back on his coattails again, takes the job in Indianapolis. They hire a bunch of coaches. 2 days later, he goes, no, never mind. Yeah. And he screws the Colts, goes back to New England, rides Brady's coattails again until Brady says, see you later, bye. And then the Patriot offense goes in the tank. Why? Because Tom Brady's not there. The genius Josh McDaniels couldn't pull them out of that tailspin. Yeah.
Well, by the way, though, I'm going to give Josh McDaniels is better than Matt Patricia.
Who is he better than? I don't know all that Patricia, without Tom Brady, who is he actually better than?
We'll see what that New England offense looks like this year.
Yeah, Matt Patricia or Joe Judge calling plays.
Oh,
I'd rather have Josh McDaniels.
Sorry, I see where you're going there. I'll give you. You know what? I don't know. Maybe one of those two could be as good as Josh McDaniels. That tells you how little I think of Josh McDaniels. Mr. Gill, a pleasure, buddy. We're going to have you with us every single week. Very much looking forward to it. Thanks for jumping in midweek with us today.
Thanks,
all right,
Mike.
We'll talk to you.